Oh, down here, sorry. Good morning. Thank you for a little flexibility on start today. As you can see, we're still waiting on some members, but with other people here in time slots as they are, we're going to go ahead and let them meander in as they do. Welcome and thank you for being here on this very cold and rainy morning in Columbia. The Department of Transportation Modernization Ad Hoc Committee, Mouthful and Large Committee is very happy to have everyone here for our, hopefully one of our wrap-up meetings of discussion. Mr. Hosey, would you start us please with a prayer?
Sure. Good morning. Dear Father, we thank you for this day, for it's a beautiful day, even though we are going to rain, and that's what we need because we had such a dry situation. We thank you, Lord, for our safe travels here, and we pray, Lord, that we will deliberate over the things that this state needs in the road work. We pray, Lord, that we will come to a conclusion that would help all the people that we serve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Hosey. Ladies and gentlemen and members of the committee, today we will have informational speakers to kind of wrap up where we are for us to move forward into our working subcommittees. And I hope you will take good notes and follow along because we have great speakers, lots of experience and a lot of information coming at you to be able to be used in your subcommittees later on today and tomorrow. Let's see, housekeeping things. Stakeholders, please, if you have any comments, I know most of you have already spoken to the group, and we won't be having any other speakers from public today. It's simply the speakers with the information for the committee. There's the email address is schouseepw, schouseepw@schhouse.gov. Please continue to submit any comments, wording, ideas, whatever it is, to that email through, I believe, Friday. And after Friday, we're going to be working on what this looks like. So Friday is your deadline. Please make sure that you send in anything that you would like us to see so that we can compile all of it and try to put our working document into something that the members can then look at and review. Representative Crawford, anything else I need to cover before we move right into the agenda?
I think that's it.
All right.
Get started.
Mr. Rainwater, it is so good to see you this morning. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For having us today. I say us because this presentation was done by a group of people in our office. I'm just the pretty face that gets to stand up here and explain it to you. You have a most difficult job. If you haven't learned that already, I think I have the easier part of today's presentation. I appreciate the chair lady's comment. This is for information. We have some information and data to share. I have no real recommendations. We will be happy to work with you on the fiscal impact of anything that you may be working on or considering later. You probably know this too, but I'd like to say it, especially on any tax issue. If this was an easy job, it would have been done a long time ago. You wouldn't be here today, but it is a difficult job. But it is a good problem because we're in a growing state. That compounds the problem because if we're not in a growing state, we still have to maintain and repair and keep going on. But it's a nice problem when your state's growing. It adds more challenges to you, but I assure you it's much better to be in a growing situation than in a state that's declining population. So the demand for road infrastructure will continue to increase. I doubt this will be the last time this General Assembly will visit it in the near future. It's been a few years, but I'm sure it will come back around again soon. And just for something else, you are probably aware of each of these points, but just for the general audience who may not be as familiar with everything, in that this is a difficult one because you have a chance to stay ahead of the curve. This is not like funding teacher salaries or in state health insurance or Medicaid where you can put money in the budget and the problem start getting addressed next year. you have to look to the future. Where's the population going to take you? What's going to be the demands in the future? Mr. Powell, Secretary Powell's a great guy, but I don't think he can build a road overnight. Or you can't put the money in on June 30th and have the road there by the next June 30th. So it takes time. It takes a lot of planning and foresight. Part of what I'm going to talk about today is that one of the difficult tasks here is for users to pay their respective share. We have different revenue sources, but ultimately this is a user fee. Who's using the roads? How do you contribute to that road? How much they're using that road or imposing upon that road? You know, can the revenue source somewhat reflect the users in that? The main thing I'm going to talk about today is how inflation is a problem. And the more the funding sources you have that address or have an inflation component, the easier this will be going down the road. It will not solve all the problems. Again, you will probably have to review this. It's been 8 years, 7 years since y'all studied this. Hopefully it'll be at least that long again, but again, trying to stay ahead of the curve, changing demands, growing population, it's just challenges there. Hopefully you can deal with those where it's not so regular to work with. And then the last thing, there is no automatic fix. There is no simple solution. Again, you'll have to continue to work and reevaluate this. So again, thank you. We have some basic data and concepts I want to share with you as we go through. So the first set of factors I want to talk about is just things that affect the demand for road construction. And just trying to put it in a graphic there so it's a little bit easier to see. But as we noted, if you've been seeing, especially in some of your counties that you represent, South Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. The South is doing very well. And these are our estimates. We're part of what we do is we work with the census. We are the census coordinator for the state, and we do the population estimates. And we have those for you showing how our populations continue to grow. We expect over the next 20 years to grow from about 5.1 to 6.6 million people. That's a pretty sizable increase. So again, more demand for roads, good problem to have. We have more resources, you have more taxpayers, but is the revenue source keeping up with the demand caused by this growth? I like to talk about South Carolina, though. We are a tale of two cities. This chart represents our estimated population growth by county. We have some counties that are growing very well, and unfortunately, we have counties that are not going to grow well. They've been on a declining trend. These are statistical estimates. I have no idea what economic development is doing. I can't anticipate what rezoning and things will do, but based on current statistical trends, these are our estimates. We've got some counties that could lose more than 30% of its population over the next 20 years. We have some that may grow more than 30%. So how do you address statewide needs in this? Certainly in a growing population area, you have more of a need because you're going to have more congestion, more roads, more development, things that add to road. But even in the declining populations, you got to maintain those roads and bridges. So there's still a cost there. It's not like it's just one part of the state. You still have a need across the state to look at issues and funding sources. But we want to point out a little bit here in this next graph how it's not just population growth, but with population growth, there's a faster demand on the roads. DOT has shared information with us on road usage, traffic patterns around, and what we have graphed here is the growth in population compared to the road usage, the number of vehicles on a road, and you can see that the vehicle usage is faster than faster than the population. So when we talk about population growth, there's a multiplier effect on how much the demand of that road is, which increases costs for maintenance and repair and everything like that. So I am presenting a statewide perspective. I know you're focused on the state transportation, but I like to include the locals here too. So just as a comparison here, the state number of state roads in the blue has only grown a little bit over the past 20 years, the way the road system is designed. But there's been a huge increase in the locally maintained roads, and you see that not quite double, but it's certainly grown in size with that program. So you're funding a lot of your, like in my neighborhood, I don't know which one's a state road or a county road coming in here or a local road, but you're going to have these challenges throughout. When we break it out a little bit more detail, and I'm sure Secretary Powell and others have shared this information, but just kind of put it in perspective. So when you look at the total road system, about 53% of the state road system, the road system is maintained by DOT. 47% is non-DOT. That's basically local roads. So you see where the demand for the roads and the maintenance cost and improvements are. We tried to break this out for you on a county basis, just put a little regional perspective in here. So what this chart shows you on slide 8 is the percentage of state maintained roads in each county. The lowest percent of maintained roads are in Berkeley County at 35%. The largest is in Lee County at 80%. And you can see by the darker the blue, the higher the state, and the lighter the blue, the less state maintained roads as a percentage. But that's just on a percentage basis. If you look at total miles here, and we tried to represent again the blue in the state and the gray in the local, 80% in one county may be less than 50% in another county, so to speak, depending on your maintained roads. But we're trying to show you here by county the total number of miles. Blue is state miles, and gray is the number of locally maintained miles. So just giving you some information to see where the road system is in this state on a county level. And just kind of put it in perspective a little bit more. Locally maintained roads, this is absolute number of miles. Allendale has the fewest number of locally maintained road miles at 123, whereas Greenville has the largest at over 2,600 miles of locally maintained road. We were able to get some data, and we talk about roads, but I know there's issue with bridges there too, and we were able to gather this data from the Federal Highway Administration. This shows the percent of bridges in poor conditions in 2025 based on Federal Highway Administrations. South Carolina, 6.3% of our bridges are considered in poor condition compared to 6.7% in the U.S. But you see that there are some states in a much worse state. Again, the darker the shade, the blue, the higher the percentage of bridges in a bad condition. Some states are the smaller smaller percentage. But you see, we're a little bit better than national average, but still that doesn't make your job any easier because it's still a costly factor. So what are the revenue sources that we currently have for road infrastructure? Just breaking this out to show you the DOT revenues. 62% of the revenue comes from motor fuel user fees, the 28 cents a gallon. The next largest piece of the pie is your infrastructure maintenance fee, which is your sales tax on new vehicles. That's 20%. So 82% of your revenue is coming from two main sources. You have smaller pieces of pie there from DMV fees, license fees, large one-time fees and road fees on large motor vehicles, and hybrid and electric power tax, hybrid vehicles, I should say. So smaller pieces of the pie from some other categories. But again, 82% of your funding is based upon sales tax on new vehicles and the current motor fuel user fee tax. User fee. So breaking it out where that goes, just putting it in perspective again for you, 20% goes to the highway fund, infrastructure maintenance fund gets 40%, DOT has 28%. But especially pointing out C funds, you do support the counties. About 10% of your motor fuel revenue goes to the counties there. So starting to get into some of the issues here. This is the annual amount of revenue from your gasoline and diesel. Gasoline is in the dark blue, and diesel is in the light blue. So this shows the total amount of collections, and then we've highlighted for you based on the 2017 bill where those road fees, the increased user fees came in and how that affected the revenue stream. But what you noticed before those fee increases, revenues were pretty stable. It's a slow growing area. You basically just get growth for the number of gallons that you have, and we'll talk about some of those challenges. But you made a pretty significant step there in 2017 significantly increased the amount of annual revenue, but you see the growth rate starting to flatten out again. We got basically little growth in motor fuel fees going out as far as gasoline and diesel. So the impact, one of the things that are impacting, which I'm sure you've already heard, is fuel efficiency, but trying to put it in perspective for you. So this chart shows the impact of fuel efficiency based on some national data. And fuel efficiency surprisingly decreased from the 80s to the 2000s, from 22 miles to average 22 miles to a gallon to less than 20. But you can kind of see what happened, how fuel efficiency has started to increase again. We've gone from almost average of 19 gallons per mile to almost 28. That increase has cost you approximately $165 million in revenue because of the efficiency. Again, just trying to put it in perspective. So you're trying to maintain roads with more cars, but you're losing revenue because of fuel efficiency. So it's just a challenge that you have there. And then just I'll kind of put it in perspective about the diversity in your revenue sources. When the gas tax, the motor fuel user fee was first increased in 1986 or 87, you see that between the motor fuel and the IMF, that funded almost 100% of DOT's operations. But that slowly decreased over time because as you increase the revenue, you're able to start expending more money. But with federal sources coming in and other sources, it's been a little bit diversified. But the revenue from your motor fuel and the IMF, the sales tax there, only accounts for about 50% of the total revenue. So we've been highly dependent upon federal sources and other sources, growing dependency over time. That's state. Locally maintained roads, just trying to put it in perspective, relative difference here. We have C-funds distributions as well as some of the counties that have a local option sales tax for transportation. You see the C-funds in the dark blue. That generates close to, for 23, a little over about $110 million there a year for C-funds. But you see a handful of counties there have a local option sales tax. But again, like the population there earlier, not all the counties have a strong tax base. The top 6 counties, as far as sales tax base, accounts for almost 60% of the total sales tax in this state. So even if a county adopted even if every county adopted a local option sales tax, some of the smaller counties obviously not going to produce a lot of revenue to do that. But just showing the distributions, the differences in the state by funding sources on that. C-funds. When you look at C-funds, the allocation of those, they pretty much follow the rural centerline miles. Again, this shows the amount of the C-funds distribution, how much money goes back to the counties, based on the percentage of the total and the percentage of the rural. So, percentage of their center lane miles. So C-funds do kind of track back to the number of roads or the amount of roads you have in there. So, get to the real crux of the matter here. I want to talk about inflation, and we talked about it a little bit, but kind of just put things in perspective for you. So just as a basic chart, we want to show the purchasing power of $100. 2 ways to look at that. We have the note at the top as well as the graph, but you see that $100, if you had $100 in 1986, once you discount for inflation, it's worth about $40 today. So you need increased revenues just to keep up with inflation. Another way to look at that is if you were buying $100 worth of road work in 1986, that same road work will cost you about $254 today. So significant increase. And just the challenge is the revenue source able to keep up with the growing demand. Another way to look at it, we just want to show you, this is the capital expenditures and maintenance cost. We took the cost over time and we've added the inflation component. So the bottom is what in economics is about real expenses. This is the 1986 version. In 1986 dollars, the gray represents just the cost of inflation. It's not more roads, it's just the higher price of the cost in this. So when we look at the total expenditures and maintenance costs and divide it for inflation, you see A lot of it's gone just to help pay for the higher cost. Not a lot of real growth in there when you look at those blue areas. So to kind of conclude here, just got some revenue examples. Again, these are not recommendations, but these are things that have been asked before when we did the roads bill in 2016, 2017. Just kind of put revenue sources in some type of relationship for you. So what we'll have here is to show you on the first left-hand side there, these are the major taxes that support the general fund. You see the income tax, $5.9 billion of the income tax goes to the general fund. 788 of the income tax goes for property tax relief funds. Sales tax, the general fund sales tax is over $5 billion for the general fund. We have 2 additional pennies for the EIA and the homestead exemption funds. They're about 1.3 and 1.18 respectively. But those are the biggest sources supporting the general fund of the state, what you pass in the budget. Corporate income tax is approximately $1.3 billion. All other general fund revenue, everything else in the budget, cigarette tax, beer and wine tax, alcohol tax, admission tax, fees and other contributions, earnings on investments, about $1.7 billion. In comparison, the lottery generates about $560 million for appropriations. Lottery revenues are much higher, but this is what goes into the budget after prizes and expenses. Motor fuel user fees, you see there, we have the motor fuel user fee and the infrastructure maintenance fee broken out for you. That's about $1.5 billion. So your motor fuel fees are a little bit more than your corporate income tax, just to put it in perspective. But it is one of the smaller items that you deal with in the state budget, relatively speaking. So one of the things I know has been talked about is indexation. I've got a couple of charts on indexation. So what we have provided for you in here is just to show you the historical trend here of the actual changes in the blue line of it's the actual motor fuel user fee with the increases at currently at 28 cents. But the dotted line represents what that fee would have been had it had been indexed for inflation since 1986. And two things to notice, there's about a 5-cent difference. If it was indexed for inflation, the current motor fuel user fee would be 5 cents more, 33 cents a gallon. But indexation is not always an answer because you notice there was a drop there. Inflation does go negative from time to time in bad situations. So there was a drop there in the about time the pandemic came around with the economic activity declining. From 2019 to 2020, inflation actually decreased. So there are times indexation can work against you or can work against a revenue stream for on inflation. But you see the gap grows on that. If you indexed it today going forward, again, just for information, assuming a current inflation factor of about 2.6%, if that stays consistent, if you indexed it today by 2050, it would get up to 51 cents a gallon, and that would produce almost $1 billion more on an annual basis on that. So you see the growth rate, we've estimated the growth rate at 28 cents a gallon. You know, not much growth going forward because of the things we talked about. Even with a growing population, you got fuel efficiency and other factors. It's going to be very limited on the growth of the current fee. One of the other items, the other big items that you have is the infrastructure maintenance fee, which is the fee on new cars. So to address the inflation component, we just ran an example. If you did a 5% sales tax without a cap, with the cap, you're only getting a volume. $500 cap, you know, it's great when we buy a car, but from this perspective, you're not getting additional volume or inflationary component there. So you're just getting based on the number of usage. So what we have estimated for you here is the current infrastructure maintenance fee. That's in the blue. If you did a 5% with no cap, you see how much more money that generates. But then we also highlighted for you, or excuse me, put out in the dotted, that's the number of vehicles sold. And you see that does go up and down from time to time. So if you try to address in addressing the inflation component, if you didn't put a cap on it, the decline in the number of units would still affect that and maybe not grow as much in the future. So there are pros and cons in all this, and you have to decide what is the more stable and what are the more revenue sources. But again, something that came up last time and just putting information out there for you. So to kind of draw this to a conclusion here, we did this graph for you from an economics perspective. What are the major revenue sources and which one changes with inflation, which ones are paid by residents, which ones are paid by businesses, and which ones are paid for tourists. Going back to users should pay for this, I'm happy to pay for my roads, but I'd be more than happy for all the tourists who come and visit our state contribute their share for using our roads as well, especially those of you in the tourist areas. So we just, for your reference here, vehicle registration fees, they're flat. There's no change with inflation. They're paid by residents, they're paid by businesses, but tourists don't participate in that revenue stream. Infrastructure maintenance fee, the tax on new and used motor vehicles, it's currently capped. There's a very small, technically there's a very small inflation, but really no inflation component. Again, residents and businesses pay that, tourists do not. The three at the bottom, motor fuel user fees, that's not indexed for inflation. It's just something you have to adjust from time to time statutorily. Residents, businesses, and tourists all pay that. General sales taxes, something new there we're putting out there for information. That's paid by residents, businesses, and tourists, and it does keep up with inflation. Toll roads, it depends on how you structure that, whether or not it has an inflation component, how do you set that fee? But it does something that would be something that would be paid by users who's using the road, residents, tourists, and businesses. So again, I don't know what your gap is, what your funding needs are, but just trying to put it in perspective, just giving you some examples here for your working knowledge as you want to work through these. But we've outlined for you on the left-hand side, again, the total motor fuel fees and infrastructure maintenance fund. Again, it's about over $1.4 billion in revenue that comes in from these various sources there. If you did the infrastructure maintenance fee, the sales tax on cars, if you did a flat 3%, lowered the rate from 5% to 3%, do a 3%, but with no cap, that would generate $226 million more money. If you raise the motor fuel user fee to that 33 cent, that inflationary component that we've lost over time, that would generate $200 million. If you want to do an additional sales tax of 0.5%, that gets you about $628 million. If you want to use some of the state's recurring money, we just did a revenue forecast and updating the budget here. If you wanted to take 27% of the new revenue that's available in recurring funds from the budget, that gets you about $200 million. I'm sorry, there's a typo there with other revenue sources. You can ignore that. And then one of the other things that's been talked about is sales tax exemptions. Motor fuels has a sales tax exemption, but if you remove that sales tax exemption, you would generate, at 6%, you would generate $720 million in additional revenue. But then the locals, with the local sales tax, they would generate another 1.6% or another $189 million there. So those are just some information to put in perspective. You may have different ideas. You may have amendments or changes. We're happy to work with you on all these issues. So, Madam Chairs, just to summarize here, the points from an economic standpoint, we think road infrastructure cost should be funded by the users. I mean, ideally, we wish we could put a counter in everybody's car and you could just tax everybody on the number of miles used, but that's not very practical. Costs are increasing due to population growth, increased usage, and inflation. These costs are affecting both state and local governments' ability to fund road infrastructure. Current revenues grow from population, but are negatively impacted, remain flat because they're fixed fees and fuel efficiencies. And then just we recognize addressing challenges, these funding challenges, requires all these considerations plus the input from not just my office, but everybody else that you have to listen to. So, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have some other information in the back I'm not going to go over. You can ask us about it later if you like, but for the sake of time, I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater. I appreciate that. That's a lot, and I'm sure that we've got a lot of spinning heads going on in the room. Mr. Stavronakis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Rainwater, good morning. How are you?
Fine.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
all the great work you and your staff always do. Again, here in this example as well, you've done an amazing job. Going back to slide 13, I'm looking at the 1% categories there for
DNR.
basically, let me let you get there. Right back.
Go.
There you go.
That one.
No, the last
Oh,
one.
third. I'm sorry. Okay.
There you
I got
go.
the wrong one.
The 1% categories there. The large commercial vehicle one, I'll have to say surprised me, that's 1%. I guess the hybrid and electric is kind of a developing. Do you have a way of getting us any data on, because you mentioned, the concept of use dictating funding, and I think to a large degree that makes sense. Do you have a way of getting us data on those two groups, what the use
Yeah, we have some
looks
data.
like?
We can talk about that, and I know Secretary Powell has done more on like the hybrid vehicles, their cost and the usage, but we have some data. If there's a specific question, we'll be glad to work on that. But we do have more data. It's limited, but we can work with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my car a lot, as you might imagine. It's kind of hard for me to believe that on large commercials that it's not a bigger use than 1%, right? I don't know how to quantify what the hybrid and electric is. I know that the secretary has said that they have a more impactful negative on the road condition. I'm certain that the big trucks do as well. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm just surprised that that's 1%. So I'm trying to figure out if we can see what that road use actually looks like. If you don't have it, I'm not asking you to have it today. I'm just saying if you could get it for us, or if you could work with DOT to get it for us.
Is that 36? We have some more information on page 36, which
Okay.
I did not cover. But certainly we'll be glad to give you more detail on that.
Okay, that would be helpful. I appreciate it. I'm sorry?
Mr. Rainwater, I think Secretary Powell has some information as well.
I can quickly address on the large commercial motor vehicle fee. So that was part of the 2017 roads bill. What had happened was the property tax previously collected, so local governments were collecting property tax on trucks, but only on the in-state fleet. It got converted to a road use fee, and basically we were catching both the in-state truckers as well as the out-of-state truckers that were kind of passing through the state. So that is based on an average millage across the state, and then it's 25% comes to DOT, 75% goes to local governments, basically as a hold harmless. One thing that is noted is the trucks do pay registration fees that are higher than regular vehicles would. Most of that actually goes to the State Infrastructure Bank rather than the Department of Transportation. And then the diesel tax component that Mr. Rainwater talked about, that is overwhelmingly paid for by commercial trucking. So it's probably, their contribution is much higher. I think it's just how it gets sliced and diced. And then,
So is that not in that pie, though?
so in the motor use fee, diesel, and it's usually at about a 2-to-1 ratio, but we can get the specifics for you. The majority of diesel tax is paid for by commercial truckers. And then,
I hear that. I'm asking, though, is it incorporated in that pie chart?
yes.
It is.
Well,
So it's still 1%, even if it's in there.
It's 1% just on that particular tax, the road fee.
On the user fee.
Their total contribution shows up in the
Well, can we get that then? Just,
Yeah, it's on the next slide. I mean,
Okay.
kind of what Mr. Powell, Secretary Powell, diesel is that bottom, which is predominantly paid by the trucking industry. And there will be some in-state trucks too, but you see that ratio there, diesel is about 1/4 of the total user fees.
Okay.
Gasoline's about 3/4.
And their registration fees are not in that pie chart because that is directed by the General Assembly into the
maybe,
infrastructure bank.
maybe what we need then, or what I need, is if someone can help with a revised pie chart that shows it all incorporated. I mean, I want to make sure we're fair to everybody.
You're-
So if we had that plus
Yeah,
the
if I-
use?
If I understand, who's the actual payer? Because the road is saying, if I understand your questioning, the truckers are paying they're paying diesel tax, they're paying registration fees, and they're paying the property tax fees. Those are incorporated in different parts of that pie chart, and we can kind of work to the best that we can to break that out.
Okay,
and show
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mr. Long?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rainwater. I kind of started diving into the appendixes here, and for the benefit of the members here, as well as the public that might be listening online, on slide 34, which you didn't touch on in your presentation, your comparison, as we talk about inflation and the effects of inflation on our ability to fund road construction. Yes, thank you for sliding over to number 34. What I understand is that as you've talked about inflation, you've actually underrepresented the effects of inflation to how our state has to deal with it, because you're using the producer price index as opposed to the National Highway Construction Cost Index. Is that correct?
Yes, all our estimates were based on producer price index, but that's why we added chart 34, that the Highway Administration has this different index specifically for road construction, and that's what's represented here, which has been a much higher annual growth rate. Inflation has been pretty much lower, but since the pandemic, the growth rate you see there is much higher for road construction over that time.
Gotcha. I just want to make
It's
sure
very
I understood
specific.
that, like, as we're talking about the effects of inflation, what's been presented today, the reality could be potentially a little bit worse
Could be,
than
yeah.
than
It's going to
what's been
fluctuate
presented.
depending on, I mean, the general inflation sometimes going to be lower, sometimes going to be higher, but recently, the road part's been much higher.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Rainwater, thank you very much for this, and it is a lot of information for us to take in, and your knowledge of all of this is just incredible. Three questions. On slide number 8, that's a very telling slide with the percentage of state-maintained roads by county. Obviously, you know that I represent Berkeley County, so it's kind of hard to see Berkeley and Madam Chair's Beaufort County, Charleston, and our neighboring counties, Dorchester, all in those lower percentages. Just as a footnote to go to my next question, slide number 13 talks about, let me pull it up here. Slide number 13 talks about the gas tax fees and the funding of that. 62% of that coming from, is it okay if I use the word gas tax versus motor fuel? That seems to be a lot of mouthful for me. Motor fuel user fee. Is gas tax
You're
the
one of
same?
the bosses, you can use whatever fee, whatever concept you want.
I think the average citizen understands what gas tax is, so let's just call it what it is.
I mean, the law calls it user fees.
I understand, thank you. And growing up in Bamberg, I'm a tomato guy. I'm not a tomato guy, but it's still a tomato. When we look at the lowest percentage of state-maintained roads, and we see that in the low country area along the coastal counties there being in that lower percentages, and then we look at where the monies are coming from to be able to, the funding sources, you made reference to it. 62% coming from the gas tax, 20% coming from infrastructure maintenance fees, 82% as depicted on that slide. My question is, based on slide number 8 that we just looked at, is there a slide prepared, or can staff prepare a slide for us to break this slide number 13 down in comparison to like slide number 8? What counties are producing these percentages? Is that, did I miss that already?
No, we don't have it. We have to make a lot of assumptions. There is a little bit better data on gasoline sales. I don't know if we have the same data on diesel. Car sales, may know where the dealers, but I do not know where the residents bought those cars. So it depends on, we can look at it, but I don't think there's a lot, we start losing a lot of integrity in the data if we have to make more assumptions on breaking it out. But we'll at least look at it and see what's available.
Let me just make sure, because sometimes what I'm thinking isn't what I'm saying. Let me just try to make this a little more clear. Just on those two items, the 62% and the 20%, and even if it's just the 62%, just on the sales tax portion, we do know where the gas is sold by county. Can we see where that is generated statewide by county, or is that not possible to get?
Yes, there's a report that has gasoline sold by county. But I will tell you that if I look at the state totals, that doesn't match up with the revenue sources. It's just different reporting systems and what gets captured. So I can try to get close to it.
That'd be great.
But I don't. It's just, we have data problems because it's two different sources, but we can look at that.
That'd be great. And then if we can go to slide
Let me
number...
just say that 62%, that includes diesel. So certainly gasoline's easier. Diesel's going to be a different question there.
And I do understand that. Thank you. If we can go to slide 28, and I only got one more after this one. Not to worry. Slide 28. The comparison of road infrastructure funding by user. My infrastructure expert happens to be sitting next to me, and I was able to lean on his knowledge, so I'm going to throw Gary right under the bus. What about choice lane as an option? Is that an option to generate revenue from existing roads as well if we were to create preferred lanes, access to? Is that something that?
Certainly. That's an option. We don't have a lot of data on. I kind of capture that in the toll road, is because I understand talking with Secretary Powell earlier. You could have dedicated, if I'm understanding you correctly, dedicated sections along an interstate for people just to bypass everything, pay a toll or a fee to use that, if that's what you're.
Yes, sir. And Director, I don't mean any disrespect, but like many of my colleagues here who are not infrastructure experts like you and your team,
He's the road guy. I'm just an economist here.
As we're evaluating all of our options, it would be helpful for me to make the best informed decision that I can as we're going through this process to know what all of the options are. And so when toll roads is used, in my simple mind, I think about going up to that orange school in the upstate and avoiding that toll road completely, not necessarily a fast pass lane that I've experienced in other parts of the country as well. So that's all I'm simply saying is that, are there other types of revenue generating options that we could navigate and move about the state? And if there are, I would hope that we as legislators would be presented all of the options that we have so we can make the best decision that we can. That's all the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, certainly. We'd be glad to work with the Secretary and his staff. That list can grow very long, and the more you can narrow it and focus it so we don't spend time on
Mr. Rainwater, I'm going to try to intersect here for a second. Mr. Smith, we asked Mr. Rainwater to give us facts of where we were. Right. Data, not so much the projection of where we should go. His options that he gave us are limited, and the toll road piece does encompass anything that is a user fee for options on traffic driving in the more modern sense of the term.
Gotcha.
I think that we will hear from Secretary Powell a little bit this morning, and then in our subcommittees, you will be getting more information from the department of Transportation pertaining to those options that all of us are looking at within those three subcommittee meetings. So Mr. Rainwater's doing exactly what we asked him to do, was give us a picture of where we are, let us know what's coming in from what section as best we can, and having some options of where we can make adjustments in existing funding is very helpful.
yeah.
So to come up with a new plan, I love you, Frank, but that's, I get you, you're the economist, and that's not your wheelhouse. And,
Well, we're happy to work with you. It just works if you tell us what's.
I was getting ready to
kinda
say,
where-
I know how you work. If I give you a scenario of if A is now B and B is now C, what does that look like?
Yes.
And I know we're gonna lean on you and really appreciate your help in working toward what any of those changes look like. And from my point of view, this is a lot of information and a lot of good data that I think we need to go and apply now to some of the policy that we're gonna discuss in these three committees. Do I have any other questions from the members?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for reeling me back in. I appreciate that as always. And then I said I had four, so my fourth final
good
question.
grief.
And it's a quick one, and I don't think you have to rein me back in on this one. This one's easy. Slide 29, Director. This one's easy, and it stays relevant to the last one. The recommendation is to remove motor fuel sales tax exemptions. Who makes up this group, sir?
It's any gasoline or diesel that's sold does not have a sales tax applied to it. So
Would that be like farmers? I'm just looking for who's included in this group, kind of do we know that, or maybe I need to
it's
get that?
everybody. We just went with everybody who purchases fuel. We didn't make exceptions for any groups. So it would be farmers, it would be you and I, it would be businesses, it would anybody that's going to the convenience store or gas station to fill up.
Thank you. Thank
Good.
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anything else? I'm sorry. Absolutely. Mr. Bowers, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater. Thank you, Madam Chairman, Chair Lady. So in our public, this will be fairly quick, and if you don't know, just that's fine. In our public hearings, we heard, I think at every public hearing, we had a pretty large contingent there on public transit. Did you do any studies on public transit?
No, sir.
Do you don't? Okay.
No.
All right, and that's fine. I'm sure we'll talk more about that in subcommittees. The fuel efficient option, if you look at that chart, and I don't know which one it was, fuel efficiency and the gas tax, it appears to me that we have two options there. Either we index the gas tax to inflation, or we stop using the gas tax to fund our roads. Is that kind of the bottom line?
Well, no,
They're diverging. you know.
Well, I mean, again, ideally, if you could tax by fuel consumption, because you got the electric vehicles, which goes
Right.
back to that other 1% pie.
And that's a pretty steep curve where that's going away.
But yes, I mean, that may plateau, but yeah, no, this is just trying to put it in perspective. I don't know what your ultimate goal here, are you looking for or is the gap $100 million or $500 million or $1 billion in addressing these factors? These are just, again, I'm not saying do away with it. It's certainly a source, but the inflationary component's not getting the value like it used to. So it's just a constant challenge you will be facing, either to come back in a committee to look every few years or do something else. So.
Yeah, a dollar from 86 is only worth 40 cents now. So that's, I mean, and that's going to continue. Finally, you said you didn't know what our funding needs are. So if you'll go back to 11, I'll show you what we have a lot of bridge problems in the upstate. So I want to ask you one question. If you don't know, that's fine. So 6.3% of our bridges in South Carolina are poor, but in Georgia, our neighbor, and that state's a lot like us, theirs is only 1.7% poor bridges. So do you have any idea what they're doing that we're not?
Secretary may have a better answer than me
Secretary,
on
okay.
that, so.
That's good. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'll let you put him on the spot.
That, I
Absolutely.
will. I certainly will.
I'm
That's
going
just-
to
that's
rescue
the
Mr.
chairman.
Rainwater at this point. Mr. Rainwater, I think you're getting a lot of questions that probably Secretary Powell is ready to take on and help you out with. Thank
Yeah,
you. I know we're going to be in touch. Please don't go far. And we appreciate all the work that you do for all of us on the budget and our
thank
special
you.
committees.
Well, thank you, and I realize I was feeding y'all through a fire hose, but I know you got more time to at least kind of put things in perspective, maybe what's doable, what's not doable, so we're here to
And one of the
assist.
committees that we have as a subcommittee is finance, so I'm sure that one will be happy if you or one of your staff is around during that subcommittee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rainwater, appreciate it very much. Secretary Powell, you want to jump into the hot seat? Because I think you've got questions from Mr. Smith and Mr. Bowers, and I don't know, Mr. Stavronakis and Mr. Robbins. So which one would you like to start with?
Well, I appreciate Mr. Rainwater leaving almost immediately as soon as he did this.
Yeah, he cut and run and left
Yeah.
you there.
Let me, I want to give, there were one question Representative Smith asked, and I got a couple updates for y'all, but I'll try to answer these real fast. I do want to get a little bit about what's the split between local and state maintained within the state, and it's really a historical answer. So the Department of Transportation was founded in 1917. That was about the time all state DOTs were getting established across the country. If you think about South Carolina at the turn of the 20th century, so we'll start with the upstate, and then I'll work down to the coast. If you think about South Carolina at that period of time, the state was almost all overwhelmingly agricultural. And so you will see the lower half of the state basically was agriculture. If you look at Greenville, Spartanburg, Pickens, Anderson, those counties at that point in time, those were the counties where we had industry. So textile mills were active. And so there was a much stronger push historically in those counties to pave roads themselves at that point in time because it was not a state priority at that time. So what you have is a history in the upstate of basically having paved their roads first and then not putting them into the state system. Overwhelming majority of the rest of the state was started putting roads into the state system, and so you see that percentage. Back up until the early 1990s, DOT would accept a subdivision road. So if you go to Forest Acres is a great example. Looks like a bunch of subdivision streets over in that area right now, but they're state highways because the developer would come, ask for the road to be accepted into the system, and the commission would largely do that. The General Assembly also told us to put numerous roads into the system. The commission in the early 1990s capped the system at that point in time. So new subdivision roads that were coming into the state system were largely then they were turning to either private roads or turning to the cities or the counties where the project was being developed. So what you see is, particularly on the coast, because that's where the growth has occurred since the 1990s, you can see Charleston, Berkeley, Horry, Beaufort counties, all of them. So that percentage of that kind of Mr. Rainwater showed that grew is really because those counties were being asked to take on that local inventory. So it's kind of a mix on history, just for context there. Representative Bowers, on the bridges, I think when you look at it nationwide, there's a bridge challenge nationwide. There was a bridge building boom in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that folks have a ton of bridges aging out. So we are in the middle of the pack, I would say, in the nation, slightly actually better than the nation, but that does not diminish, in my book, the bridge challenge that we have across South Carolina, particularly in the upstate with the timber pile bridges that are particularly acute in your district. But what you'll see is, other states, so you see Iowa and the Dakotas, those are a lot of county-maintained farm roads that the county governments there are not necessarily maintaining. When you look at Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Michigan, they have a propensity to do steel bridges, and steel bridges tend to rot away as well. So you have that, but, and then Louisiana is mostly water, and so they have a lot of bridges across the state that they have to maintain. So, but I don't think it diminishes while we're kind of average for the rest of the country. What I would say is it's a nationwide problem, but that it doesn't diminish the challenge that we're facing across South Carolina. So I just have a couple things for y'all, and then most of my presentations will be in the actual specific subcommittees, and we'll go more in depth starting this afternoon. I do want to just give a few quick updates to the committee about things that have been going on since the listening sessions have been going on. I talked about that we were revising our low-volume bridge design standards to get more common sense into projects getting out. Those have been completed. We've turned them over to our federal partners for their review. We are awaiting their final comments, and then once we get that, then we will move forward from there. We have been in a process review of our encroachment permit process. A stakeholder survey just went out yesterday to folks that are users of that encroachment permit process. Continue to work on that. And then there's been a lot of discussion about the MPO and COG process. On Thursday, our commission has been talking about this. We'll be asked to adopt a policy to help define the projects that MPOs and council of governments do, to focus them in on 4 key areas: safety, encouraging multiple modes, transit, pedestrian, dealing with congestion is an area of heavy emphasis for us, and then we call it positioning for economic growth, whether it's a high-growth community being able to be prepared for that investment coming in, if you're a low-growth community trying to encourage that growth. The other thing that we are going to be stressing with them is to select projects within the funds allocated. It doesn't make sense to program a $200 million bypass if you're getting $10 million per year for your MPO and COG. So, which occurs more often than we would hope. And so trying to get programs and projects that really are in the 3, 4, 5 year range of their funding availability, so that we have something that is reasonable, targeted, and delivers for the people. The other thing that we will be starting off and will be presented at our commission on Thursday, we have taken through this process an opportunity to review our regulations. And we are going to be proposing a pretty significant reduction in our regulations, removing things that were superseded by law or other events. So that will be announced on Thursday, but I wanted to give you all that preview that we are going to be doing a pretty decent reduction in our regulations based on just kind of this opportunity that we got through this. So it'll be a present there. And then you know, certainly we continue our internal efforts where we can internally to accelerate again, but the opportunities for us, I think we've talked about with this committee of helping us accelerate and do more, really fall into the 3 categories I've talked before about, dealing with getting more coordinated on planning both at the state level as well as at the regional level, enhancing our toolkit, whether that's NEPA assignment, new procurement tools, or adding P3s and tolls to our repertory. And then I think Mr. Rainwater hit on it well today, is that inflation has eaten a significant portion of our buying power since 2021. The highway cost index, I was preparing something the other day. We have seen a 65% increase in that between 2021 and now in terms of our buying power. So we have seen that. So if there's, we can get more tools in the toolkit, but if there's a desire for us to do more, to build more, to maintain more, ultimately we'll take more funding. But with that, Madam Chair, I will know that there's a long road ahead of us and more questions, so happy to answer what everybody has got, but we'll go in more depth in the subcommittee.
Mr. Robbins, you have a question?
Chair, if I
Absolutely.
could get this microphone working, got it. Good morning, Secretary. How are you, sir?
Good, sir.
I just would like to ask you, for the benefit of the committee and anybody that is watching at home, to briefly summarize where you think the DOT would be in 2025 had the legislature not acted in 2017 to provide the increase in motor fuel user fee monies.
So what I would say is One of my predecessors, about 2, 3, 4 ago, said his job was to manage the decline of the state highway system rather than the construction and maintenance of it. I'd argue that would be what we would be in the position right now. So I can tell you what we would not be doing. We would not be having the number of bridges under construction across the state. 2695 Malfunction Junction would be at the current state as they were. So if you think about where it was 10 years ago to where we are today, those improvements would not have been made. And I would say our pavements would not be in a better condition. So I've kind of shared, I did a presentation a couple weeks ago. Before the 2017 roads bill, we were at 65% good on our interstates in terms of pavement condition. We're at 80% now and got hundreds of miles under construction. So we'll be on track there. Our primary network, which is where the majority of our traffic is, was at 19% good before the 2017 roads bill. We're at 40% good. Now, does that mean we still got a long ways to go? Absolutely, but our system is in better shape because of it, and we've been able to take more projects on. I think, but we were focused at that time on maintenance, and that's something that we're going to have to continue to focus on. But at the same time, we've seen South Carolina change, and so I couldn't imagine what kind of pressures we're dealing with if we hadn't had that investment at that point in time.
Yes, sir. You have a question? Yes, sir.
Good morning. A little bit with CTCs. I think it comes to us a little bit of a surprise when we find out, or when the public finds out that the 3.99 cents that the CTCs receive, 33% of it has to go towards state roads. Can you give us your input on what you think, if that 33% went away, that we just focus on the county-maintained roads because the remaining amount goes towards the the gas tax goes towards state roads and state projects?
So, the CTC program or the C-Fund program really started in the 1940s, and it was appropriation for secondary roads. So it was A, B, C. A's were for primary routes, farm to markets were B's, and secondary roads were C's. That's where the term actually came from. I think if you remove the 33% requirement, I think when you look at it, our investments on pavements right now, so we put in about $700 million per year on pavements. Our investment patterns follow where the traffic is. So it's $150 million for interstates, it's 400 or so, 300, 400 million, I don't have the specific number on the top of my head, for our primary routes, and then it's 140 million for farm to market secondaries and 82 million for non-fiber-related secondaries. So what you're talking about is the secondary network, that's where those typically the C-Fund money goes to on that. It means less money going into our secondary network, whether, based on what that committee may have picked. So at the end of the day, it does take away, you can grow what's going into local road networks, but would take away from the investment from the state system and will require us to find alternatives or, reduce our investment elsewhere.
Okay, I guess because part of that leans into that when we feel like we can create more projects if we had more funding, but to the general public, it just seems that they are a little bit surprised that the state's giving money, but then taking it back, or a third of it back. And so I guess I was more interested in finding out if that could be absorbed on the state side so that the counties and the CTCs could produce more
Absent
projects.
new money, sir, what I would say is without that funding, all that would likely be going into the secondary system is the 220 or so that I'm putting in towards it. So if there was a desire for more investment in the secondary system, which is our largest part of our road network, but is the smallest amount of our traffic, then I would have to carve it from elsewhere in my budget to do so, which would have impacts to bridges, interstate safety, wherever it may be. So if there's a desire, I think if you're looking at the pie, probably the better solution is to grow the pie as opposed to changing how the pie is sliced.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? No? Thank you, Mr. Powell. Appreciate that. Gentlemen, we've had a good update. lots of information from Mr. Rainwater, and I know that Secretary Powell and his staff are going to be attending all of our subcommittee meetings. And since I'm bringing up subcommittee meetings, I'm going to toss the microphone over to Representative Crawford to outline a few of our housekeeping situations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A big thank you to everyone here, the stakeholders, members of the public, and members of the committee who joined us all around the state on our listening tour over the last few months. We've heard a lot, and I appreciate all of you being there and everything that you have brought to the table thus far. So now we are going to move into the portion of our working subcommittees. You have all received the information. There are 3 different subcommittees. I will announce those in just a second and the times that they are meeting. We will be meeting this afternoon. We'll break for lunch following this meeting. We'll start this afternoon at 1, and then we have 2 subcommittee meetings tomorrow. Those have all been announced, but we'll announce all of that here for everyone's information. As we move into that, just a little bit about the subcommittees, going to work very similar to how we work in our subcommittee meetings in the House. Again, these are working subcommittees. We know we have a large committee. We also know we have a lot of issues and a lot of things that we have talked about. We've identified some issues or barriers, and now's the time to talk about some solutions. Bring your ideas, bring your solutions. Let's have these working subcommittees. Secretary Powell and his team will be on hand at these committees. There will not be formal presentations or public input since we have done that for the last few months. This is a time for members to discuss what we've heard around the state, the public input we've been given, and all the presentations that we've received. So this will be your opportunity to bring your ideas so that we can formulate this legislation. With that, this afternoon, we will start at 2:30. All right, that's this afternoon, Tuesday, December the 2nd at 2:30. And that will be our organizational review subcommittee meeting. Again, that's at 2:30. That's Hager, Hickson, Lawson, Martin, Montgomery, Rivers, Robbins, and Teeple. Tomorrow, we will have at 9 a.m., tomorrow, Wednesday, December the 3rd, 9 a.m., that will be Brewer, Chapman, Garvin, Guffey, Mitchell, Stavronakis, and Vaughn. And that is the Future Needs Subcommittee meeting. That will be Future Needs. And then the 3rd subcommittee will meet tomorrow afternoon, December the 3rd at 1 o'clock. That will be Bowers, Hosey, Kirby, Long, Sessions, Smith, and Willis. I do want to say, and we've had some questions, would love for everybody on the committee to attend any and all meetings that you're interested in. Absolutely, you're welcome as members to attend those. We would just ask that we let the subcommittee members have their discussions, give their input, and then if you have anything to add as members, we absolutely want to hear from you. We do know that we're up against the clock, but we have allowed several hours for us to have plenty of time. If they run over a little bit, we will be flexible with that. And also, of course, you also can submit your comments or any additional information to staff. So we want everybody to be heard. We will take the time to do that in these working subcommittees. And Secretary Powell and his team, again, have been gracious to be on hand and help and serve as a source of information for any questions that you have or anything that you need. All those meetings will be in this room here in 110. So with that, are there any other questions now before we break? Anybody have any questions? All right then. Well, thank you so much, and we will reconvene this afternoon at 2:30. Thank you.